He goes, yeah, you're going pretty quick. I'm like, what was I really? He goes, yeah. And at this point, I'm like, I'm going to jail. So as a car guy, a lot of people think back to what got them into cars, and it might have been the posters they had on the walls. It might have been the slot cars. For me, it had a lot to do with my family and my grandparents in general. So when I was 10, my grandfather, who'd always been a diehard car guy, he bought a brand new Corvette. He treated himself to a brand new Corvette. If he was going anywhere in that car, I was typically in the passenger seat, and he drove that car like you would expect a grandfather to drive, though. I don't think it ever got above 85 miles an hour. I don't think the top ever came off, but as a 10-year-old in the passenger seat, I might as well have been in a Lamborghini. It was crazy to me. So I spent quite a bit of time with my grandparents growing up. They were what you call snowboard birds in Vermont. A lot of retirees get tired of the snow, which I can't really blame them. So they go somewhere down south in the winter from probably November to like May. So my grandparents would do that every winter, and they would take my grandmother's Honda Accord. My grandmother was not really a great driver. She's one of the sweetest ladies. She can make conversation with anyone in the world. I don't think anyone's had a bad experience with her unless she hit their car. She was always great. She'd always pay. She always, would cut them a check for the damages. But again, not a great driver. So when I turned 16, I would always be the one driving, when we would go somewhere. But she always seemed to have the weirdest interactions with law enforcement. So one winter, my grandfather and grandmother are down in Florida, and she goes, I haven't seen snow in 5 years. So I want to come up a few weeks and enjoy the winter time. And so she comes up, it's probably January, February, and she's staying at their house, and they had her Honda Accord down in Florida, and the garage was my grandfather's brand new Jeep Wrangler. And she is a 5 foot tall woman, and even though it's a stock ride height, she still had to kind of heave ho herself into it. And so she's going out to dinner one night with my dad, and she's coming back from dinner driving the Jeep Wrangler. And it had just snowed. It wasn't snowing at the time, but it was enough to where the roads were a little questionable. And she didn't really know how the headlights worked in the car. She was used to automatic headlights, so I think she had her parking lights on, or maybe there were no lights on at all. And so she's driving down the road, and sure enough, she sees blue lights behind her. And she's a very thoughtful lady. So she goes, well, there's a lot of cars here on the road. It's not very well lit. This isn't a good place to get pulled over. I think I'm going to go a couple blocks down to where I know I can pull over. And so she just keeps driving. And she's a little hard of hearing, so I don't think she heard them on the PA going, ma'am, pull over, or, driver, pull over. And so she just kept driving. And so maybe a mile down the road, she finally decides to pull over. She pulls over to the shoulder, and police come up, and they're a little concerned because they see someone that had just been evading them for about a mile. So they've got their hand on their gun. They come up, they're rapping on the window. And if you've ever driven a Jeep Wrangler, the window switches are in the center. This was probably the second or third time she'd ever driven that car. So she really didn't know, she didn't know how to turn the headlights on. So she didn't know how to roll the windows down. So they're banging on the glass. She's frantically reaching for the window switch. She can't find it. And eventually goes, I'm just going to open the door. So she whips the door open. And now the guns come out. They're pointing at her, and they go, ma'am, please, stay in the car, stay in the car. And they think that she's been drinking, which, I can count on, both of my hands how many times I've seen her drink. So she's stone cold sober. And they go, ma'am, we believe you've been drinking. Did you not see us back there? And she proceeds to tell them, what she was doing. And they weren't having any of it. They proceed to say, please step out of the car. We're going to give you a field sobriety test. So they start doing, all the field sobriety tests on her, the touch your nose, the alphabet backwards, just everything that you can do. And then they go, okay, we're going to need you to stand, walk 1 foot right in front of the other on this line. And she goes, well, I can't do that. And they go, no, ma'am, we need you to do that. And she goes, well, about 5 years ago, I fell, and, unfortunately, she had fallen and broken both of her knees. So she had replaced both of her knees at the same time. And while she had recovered at this point, she never really, was fully 100%. So she kind of wobbled, and they're like, you're wobbling quite a bit. And she's like, well, I told you I can't do that. And then they tried to say, okay, stand on one leg and put your other leg up in there. And she's like, I really can't do that. We have a feeling that you've been drinking. We're going to bring you back to the station. At this point, she's very concerned. She's never been in a situation like this before. So she goes, why don't you just give me the breathalyzer? I'm done with this. I want to go home. And she doesn't really get frustrated very often. So that was very out of character for her. And they bring out the breathalyzer, and sure enough, 0.00. And she goes, yeah, that's kind of what I told you when you pulled me over. And they go, well, you understand our concern when you drive away from us. And I can't really blame them in that situation. So she then goes, well, while you're here, can you show me how the windows and the lights work? So then she had a little, presentation demonstration right there on the side of the road where the police officers, showed this is how the lights work. Make sure you turn them off when you're done. This is how the windows work. This is how the directional works. I know how the directional works. That's my grandma for you. And so they finally let her go. And as they're going, she goes, "Oh, I just want to let my son at the time, or my dad, is very good friends with the chief of police for your jurisdiction. So I'll let him know about that. But I know you're just doing your job at the end of the day." It did end up coming back to my dad. He did hear about it. And, looking back now, everyone gets a good laugh out of it. Nothing bad happened. All things considered, it went fairly smoothly. About a year later, it's summertime now, so she's back in town. My grandfather actually decided to stay in Florida for the summer, enjoy some of Florida summer, which I don't know why you would, but hey, more power to him. So she's driving home, and at this point, I was living with her. I was in college at the time, and I hated living in the dorms. I said, "Look, why don't I live with you? We'll kind of take care of each other." And honestly, it was a few of the best years of my life. My grandmother is one of my best friends. So she goes out one night having a quilting night with her friends, just, the most innocent thing you can do. And she's driving back, and normally she's back at 8 o'clock, 8:30, and it's 9 o'clock. I get a little worried. I call her, and I hear her phone ringing downstairs. I go, that sounds about right. 9 o'clock, 9:30 rolls around. I'm starting to get a little worried, kind of look around. And about a few minutes after that, I hear a car door shut in the driveway. It was weird that the garage door didn't open. I was like, that's weird. So I look out the window, and it's our good old Burlington City Police Department. This is not good. Hopefully she's still alive. That's never a good sign when you're waiting on someone to come home and a police car shows up. And so I run down the stairs, I open up the door, and two big City of Burlington police officers standing there, and my little grandmother right in between them just going, "Hello, how's it going?" What's going on? They're like, "Well, we just want to make sure she got home safely." And I go, that's weird. Is everything okay? They go, "Yeah, everything's fine. She's not in any trouble." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And so they proceed to leave. I go, "Well, what's going on?" She goes, "She was driving about 2 miles before her house. She, again, didn't use her directional," which was middle of the night. There were no cars around. I mean, oh well. They decide to pull her over, and they pull her over. And, for a few minutes, they're talking to her, "Ma'am, you didn't use your directional." And knowing her, she made a little bit of a good conversation with the officers. So she was probably there 5-10 minutes on the side of the road with her accessory switch on. "Well, hey, drive safe. We're not going to give you a warning or a ticket. Just make sure you use your directionals." They leave. And she goes to start the car a couple minutes later after she puts her license away, and click, click, click. The car's dead. So she doesn't have her phone. She's not going to walk a few miles home. So she just kind of sits in the car and waits. And about 20 minutes later, after just sitting there, the police officers are doing their laps, and they come back and they see her and they go, "Is everything okay? We noticed you haven't left." And, she kind of tells them, "Well, you kept me here so long on the side of the road that my car died." And so I figured, well, they're resourceful officers. They probably have jumper cables in that, right? No, so they just left her car there. They gave her a ride, which I guess I appreciate them doing. She comes back home, and middle of the night, of course, I would do anything for that woman. We grab my jumper cables, hop in my truck. A few check engine lights are on, but must be from the battery being dead. Must be a Honda thing. So she's scared to drive it with the check engine light, and I proceed to tell her, no, it's just ignore that. I mean, I've driven plenty of cars with check engine lights for long distance. She wasn't having it. So she drove my truck back, which I can't see being more enjoyable than a car with a check engine light. And I drove her car. It was funny because a few days after that story, she's hanging out with my dad and some of his friends who are Burlington law enforcement. And they were telling my dad about how they pulled this older woman over and they felt so bad because they kept her there for so long and her battery had died. And he goes, "I'm pretty sure that was my mom." That's Vermont. Everyone knows everybody type of story. And it just seems every time she gets pulled over, it's never business as usual. There's always something weird about it. But the last story with my grandmother and law enforcement actually doesn't involve her getting pulled over. It involves me. So about 2 weeks before we're doing our Cannonball run, I had just tuned my car. It was a Mercury Grand Marquis, and I'd driven it a few months before, and it did about 110, and then the limiter kicked in. And I'm like, we're doing a Cannonball, we can't have that. So I find a guy that can tune the limiter out for track use, of course. And so he tunes the limiter out, and my grandmother is actually in Massachusetts for the weekend. And I call her, I'm just talking with her on the phone. I go, "Hey, how are you getting home?" She goes, "I'm gonna take the bus." I go, "No, you're not taking the bus. You're 4 hours from me. You're not taking a bus." I was like, "I'm off on Wednesday. I'll come down. I'll meet you there at 11 o'clock. And she's like, "No." I was like, "You don't have a choice in this. I'll see you at 11 o'clock. We'll have a nice ride back." And I was like, it's perfect because my car is, aside from the fuel system, fully prepped. So I have all my electronics, my scanner, my radar detectors. I'm untouchable. I'm in a Cannonball car. So I was like, this will give me a good shakedown run. So I'm coming through the mountains of New Hampshire, and I'm going, 100, 110, 120 allegedly. Okay, the limiter's gone. I'm happy, and I'll kind of go back to normal, 20 over, not 50 over speeds or 40 over. And so I'm driving and on Waze, I see, a few miles ahead, there's a cop. So I slow down to, 67, a few miles over, and I pass him. He's not going to get me for anything. I'm going, 10 and 2. I'm going at a legal speed. As soon as I pass him, his blue lights come on. I'm like, oh, that's not good. I was going pretty quick a few miles ago. Maybe I got called in. If I got called in, I can get out of that. They can't prove it was me. Pulls me over. I'm Officer so-and-so with New Hampshire State Police. This is being recorded on body camera. Can I have your license? And I do the typical, yes, officer, my license is in my pocket. Do you mind if I reach for it? Which he was happy about. And he goes, yeah, so the reason why I pulled you over, we actually have a plane up in the air. And I go, oh, I didn't know you guys had planes. Turns out they had 2, which is just my luck that one of them happened to be over me. I go, oh, he goes, yeah, you're going pretty quick. I'm like, what was I really? He goes, yeah, and at this point I'm like, I'm going to jail. I gotta call my grandma and say, hey, you're gonna have to take the bus home because I'm in jail right now. He goes, yeah, we clocked you. You're going about 87 miles an hour back there. I go, really? 87? That seemed quicker. Are you sure, officer? He goes, yeah, you're going pretty quick. Maybe you're passing someone. I go, I don't know. It doesn't sound like me. I don't typically. If you say so, I apologize. What do we do from here? And he goes, where are you headed today? I go, I'm actually going to pick up my grandmother. She's out in Massachusetts and she needs a ride home. He goes, okay, you want to pick up your grandma? Takes my license, doesn't take my registration, says nothing of the fact that my car is a Mercury with Ford badges. Comes back and he goes, so did you buy this with all the electronics in it? Or, did you buy it off the police department? I go, some of it came like that. It's just, I like it. I'm a radio enthusiast. And he goes, okay. Tell you what, you slow it down, you tell your grandmother she has a good day and you have a good day as well. And I go, okay. I was like, I'm going to sit here for a few minutes and kind of compose myself. And I'm like, I kind of work myself down. I'm like, okay, I feel like I'm doing okay. Was not looking forward to a 120 ticket before my cannonball. That would not have been a good start. And so I pick her up and I say, hey, you're not going to believe what happened. I got pulled over and I was going well north of 100 miles an hour. And he said I was doing 87. And I told him I was coming to pick you up and he let me off. She goes, oh, that's great. By the way, if you ever need to, you just tell him I fell or you tell him that I'm having, a diabetic episode and I'll call and I'll back your story up. And I go, yeah, Grandma, of course. So yeah, that sounds great. My grandmother's always been one of my best friends. I tell her everything I do and she's always been a big supporter. We like watching VINwiki videos when we're in the car together. And I think that's how she knows some of my, that I tend to drive a little bit quick. So your grandma might be cool, but she's not get you out of 120 over, ticket cool. So.
This month, we've got our 2 best deals ever back from Glossit. We've got their DIY ceramic coating kit, which is a $210 value, including their graphene ceramic coating, plus a bottle of their ceramic detail spray, which makes the application so easy an idiot like me can do it in my own garage. That's a $210 value for just $69.99. Or, if free is the better price, you can get a bottle of their award-winning detail spray for free. Just pay the shipping and handling. We've had to limit that, so I don't know how many are left, but check the links in the description below and find out which you can get. Either way, you're going to get some great Glossit goodness.